Right. Welcome everybody. We can start with introductions. If you're just joining us, introduce yourself in the chat. There's a prompt on screen. Let's here's our agenda today. We'll do some quick intros of the Kelley Direct Marketing Association and Women in Business Association. And then we'll get right in with our guests over their career journeys to and including CMO roles and whatever they see as next for them. And then a little bit of a in the weeds of what does the CMO do for all of us who are either thinking about a career in marketing, new in marketing, or seasoned marketing professionals in the Kelley program. And then some discussion points around personal development. If you wouldn't mind putting questions in the chat, we'll watch the chat and have quick follow-ups queued from that. But if you could stay on mute and then use a hand raise for open questions towards the end, that would be great. And for our guests, feel free to stay on mic and ask each other questions and mix it up and throw some curveballs in there. That sounds exciting to me. So Jordan.
All right, cool. Yeah, so again, thanks Deborah, TD, and Erin for taking the time out of your day to join us and give us some insight into your journey and experience as you've built your careers behind yourselves. Also, thank you to the Women in Business Association here at Kelley Direct for helping us put this together and get the word out. And then just a quick intro for KDMA, that's a Kelley Direct Marketing Association. Our goal is to help students within Kelley Direct to network, upskill, and explore the many facets of marketing. So if you have interest in joining as an active member of the association, or if you're interested in just joining more of our events in the future, we'll reach out after this, and you can respond to that email or you can send an email to Marcus, who's the one who's essentially emceeing and hosting this event. So yeah, thanks all for joining.
Great. And so I'm Marcus. I'm an MBA student at Kelley, hoping to graduate next year. Vice president of the Marketing Association and in charge of membership and recruitment. 16 years in direct-to-customer digital marketing, early on in e-commerce and now in higher ed. And I am excited to let our guests introduce themselves and take no more time from me. But Deborah, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, and we'll get rolling.
Happy to. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Jordan. And hello, fellow Kelley students and grad students, and to my fellow panelists. I'm super happy to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I actually was an IU Kelley undergrad. That was before it was actually called the Kelley School of Business. I graduated in '89 with a business degree, emphasis on marketing advertising. And I interviewed, and I'm from New York originally, and I'm speaking to you today from New York. And I was looking to get back to New York after my Kelley graduation. And of course, a lot of the jobs at the time, and probably still, are mostly Midwest based. But through the Kelley School, I actually got an interview for a position on Fashion Avenue that took me back to New York. So my very first job, which is actually not on my LinkedIn profile, was through the Kelley School. It was as a buyer for mercantile stores. And I was there for just a short while. And back in the day, we didn't have internet, but we did have job fairs. And I actually went to one of those because I was unhappy on Fashion Avenue. And I went to what was then this Dean Witter booth because one of my fellow IU grads was in the analyst program at Dean Witter, which was later acquired by Morgan Stanley. And I struck up a great conversation with the recruiter and joined Morgan Stanley ultimately. And I spent 10 years there in lots of different and great and exciting marketing roles, mainly in the alternative investment space. And then from there, I joined UBS, heading up a brand new division there in the alternative investment space, so hedge funds and private equity funds. From there, I joined EY, the accounting firm. I spent 10 years there in various marketing roles and became Ernst Young's first named chief marketing officer. My responsibilities were markets throughout the Americas. After that, I then joined, actually, I took a little bit of a hiatus, did some consulting, and worked for a bunch of startups. I had a little bit of a startup bug, and I was doing a little bit of sweat equity and getting excited about all kinds of new technology, including my passion for Bitcoin and blockchain. I took a position early days with Grayscale during that time, later joined EY, and later joined, I should say, Broadridge Financial Solutions as their global CMO. So it was the first publicly traded company that I was the CMO for, which was super exciting, until I got a call to rejoin Grayscale about two and a half years ago in a CMO role. And I was there for about 6 months. And the last 2 years or so, I've been on hiatus, contemplating perhaps starting my own venture and possibly in the blockchain. So that's sort of my quick, resume and my experience with Kelley. And I will say I go back every year, try to go back every year for at least a football game, and have lots of, of course, great friends and whatnot through the school then and now. And I am always excited to hear from, current students and prospective students, and to be helpful in any which way I can.
Amazing. TD, you want to take it next?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Super excited to be here and get a chance to talk to you guys. I can remember like it was yesterday when I was sitting on that side of the camera, of the table, as a student. So I actually went through the Kelley Direct program. I can't remember if we were the first class or the second class, but we were one of the first class. It was 2002, 2003. And now, super proud to know that it's still the #1 online MBA program out there. So, having that notoriety, I think, is great. And I know all of the alumni and all the folks that are all part of the big red line continue to tout that. So that's what's exciting. My journey is a little bit different. I actually started in the military. I was in there I went to the Air Force Academy undergrad. So I was a military officer, and then transitioned out of the military to General Mills. So I came in to General Mills as a former military officer, and then that's when I chose to pursue my MBA while I was there. So my career has basically been in consumer products, primarily food. I did a stint at Kimberly-Clark where I was also in some personal care products, but primarily food. One of my claims to fame that I'm super proud of is, I don't know any Coors Light fans out there, but I was the brand manager that put the blue in the mountains. So when you put the can in the in the fridge and it turns blue, like, yes. So that's my party favor, if you will. But my sort of CMO journey, I was a CMO at Welch's. So if anybody eats Welch's fruit snacks or Welch's grape juice, I had the opportunity to do that. Then I had a pretty long stint at Jack Link's. I was a CMO at Jack Link's. So if you've seen the Messing with Sasquatch commercials and things like that. And then most recently, I'm the chief growth officer, which is really like being a CMO. I just also have our Canada and our national business, which is why I have a little bit expanded scope here at Post Cereal. So, Fruity Pebbles, Honey Bunches of Oats, Grape Nuts, and if you guys any of those participate in those brands, that's what we get to sell. So love everything that I've been able to have the opportunity to do in marketing. Marketing is such a multifaceted, as I'm sure Erin and Deborah can attest to, is such a multifaceted discipline, which is what makes it fun. No day is like any other, and that's why for me it's get to wake up every day and do something exciting. So happy to talk more about that with you guys as we go through the panel.
So, and Erin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm smiling so much at just coming right after TD and listening to some of his CPG stories, because I definitely have a CPG theme in my history as well. And I'm thinking about, his experience with cereal and fruit snacks after starting at General Mills. I'm sure that is a whole separate conversation for us CPG marketing minds that we could have. But I'm happy to be here with you today. I think if anything, what both Deborah and T talked about, the fact that, marketing means and stands for so much. And I think at the core of how I've defined my career and what I've done, it just all centers around curiosity and creativity and connectedness. And from there, it can really take you anywhere. And I remember as a student thinking, okay, that's great, but how do I get my first job and how do I get started? And there definitely is this point where you launch your career and you need to be open to it all because there's just so much abundance that will come your way. So my path from IU was coming to Kelley School of Business, thinking I wanted to do marketing, not really actually sure what marketing was. For me at the time, marketing was really in my mind more of a sales position. It was actually through my time at Kelley that I understood the different areas that you can go into with marketing, and I chose brand management. So I also did a run at General Mills. And my claim to fame there is actually working with the CMO at the time to stand up our brand champions program, which is something that's still in use today at General Mills. And it really is all around defining what marketing is and the power of marketing. And I use that still every single day in the framework that I do. And the way it was defined and the way that we defined it at General Mills, it starts with insights. It starts with the wants, needs, jobs, dreams. And then from there, you really go to the whole strategic positioning around product and brand. And what are the key benefits? What are the reasons to believe? And then from there, you can go more into the strategic communications. So that's what I do today. I am currently the CMO, and the way that we talk about it at Caribou is the Chief Brand and Marketing Officer. So Caribou Coffee, which is most known in the upper Midwest. We're in all 50 states in our CPG business, and then also globally as well. Between what I talked about at General Mills and where I am now, I did some tech startup work. I founded, launched, and sold a company. I've worked with other startups. I've worked in health insurance. So when you look at my career, it's a little seemingly all over the place. But I think one of the things that I learned at Kelley that's been really important today is to actually look at what drives you, what you're curious about, what makes you feel like you have creative solutions and options and growth options to build, and build your career around that. Worry less about the job titles and the companies and more around the curiosity and the creativity.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, so my next or follow-up question for everybody, we'll just stick with you, Erin. So thinking about, would you be able to say that there is this theme or through line to the career? Or if you did make a big pivot, what was the hardest pivot to make?
I do think that, there's so much that's folded into marketing that we could talk about all day. Like some of the things, Marcus, when you were sending out some of your prompt notes, I think you were talking about the full list, right, of all the different things that you can do as a marketer. You can be involved in sales and customer service and experience and channel management and product development, right? And it all because marketing does stem from the P's and the C's and all the things that we learned at school. I think that really, though, what people are looking for at the end of the day is how can I take what I do, product, service, whatnot, and connect it in the most meaningful way with the right human at the right time at the right place. And so the way that I've really framed the thinking that I do is around that, what I call my 3 C's, which is the curiosity, connectedness, and creativity, but also even thinking through the who, what, why, when, where, and how. So it's just thinking through, not overthinking, I guess, the frameworks, but then really deeply thinking around as a consumer, as someone who has access to all of these incredible frameworks and thoughts around how to grow a brand or, grow a product, grow a service. How can I actually make that meaningful connection? Addressing all of the key parts, all the P's, all the C's. Even back to the basics of who are you serving? What are you serving to them? Why are you serving it to them? And then I think letting that sort of guide your journey, you'll wind up in a lot of different spaces and places, but I think it'll all come back to what gets you up in the morning, what fuels you, what connects your day to day, and at the end of the day makes you feel like you really have a fulfilling career.
I was going to say, I really love the 3 C's, Erin. I didn't know, of course, we hadn't met beforehand. My definition of marketing, big M marketing, I talk about the 3 R's for me, which is revenue, reputation, and relationships. And that really speaks to the function of marketing. But to answer the question that Marcus was asking, was there a single thread through your career? And you talked about creativity and following things that were exciting to you. I think that's absolutely true, particularly in the beginning when you're starting to, explore what companies and industries and all of that. I would say once you get past that, the other overlay that I think is really, really, really important is the people. It's the relationships. Who are you in business with? Who is your CEO? Who are your colleagues? And you can't always choose your boss, but you do have an opportunity when you're interviewing to get a sense for who that person is, because we all spend more waking hours with the people that we work with and for than we do our family and friends for a big chunk of our lives, right? And I'm a mom. I was married for 25 years. I've got 2 great kids, but still, for a large portion of my time, most of my waking hours were spent with my colleagues. And so if you don't see eye to eye, if you're not morally and ethically aligned, if you're not aligned from, what's the goal of the company and the role, you can find yourself very sad pretty quickly. So certainly be creative, chase, what gets you up in the morning, and surround yourself with great people, both in terms of who you're working with and for and who you hire.
PD, any thoughts on your through line and or big pivots or anything?
Yeah. Well, first of all, everything that Erin and Deb said, I 100% agree with. And I'm stealing both the 3 C's and the 3 R's. So just so you know, I will give you guys all the royalty credit, but I'm stealing it. So
PD, I want Deborah to put that in the chat. I was like, I couldn't write fast enough, right? Because it was like a big M. Okay. So I'm with you. Yeah,
okay. That's great.
Me too. Great.
The only thing I would add, and here's, my through line, if you will, has been, when I think about marketing as we are behavioral change engineers. I subscribe to the Sergio Zeman, if you guys know Sergio Zeman, longtime CEO of Coke, but he used to have this quote, like, marketing is about selling more stuff to more people for more money more often. And when you break that down, it really is all about a form of behavior change, right? You're trying to get people who are doing something today to do something different tomorrow. That something could be spend more money with you, buy more often, right? If they haven't tried you, to try you. And so, every role that I've, been a part of, and I'm 100% online with what Erin said about, you chase the skills, not the titles. The learning how to change behavior has always been something that's been exciting and fulfilling for me in different categories, because you have different challenges that you need to overcome from consumer. We're all consumers, and so we all know what it takes to change our own behaviors. And so thinking through that as a science, right, that also relies on art is really, to me, the through line that I found. And it's the way I think about marketing, the way I kind of teach my teams to think about marketing.
Awesome.
Okay, I have to add one thing to that, Marcus, because it's funny, because actually, like, thinking about marketing and being a CMO, something that never ceases to amaze me, and TD, you're probably going to like this, is how people think marketing is pretty simple and glossy. If you haven't heard this yet, you will hear this. Everyone really truly thinks they are a marketer, but we all laugh about it. I think, marketing people, because marketing is an art and a science, right? It's beauty and it's technique. It's challenging and it's exhilarating. And it's because we are being asked to actually accomplish really meaningful pieces of business through both art and science. So I love, Deborah and TD, what you guys have both said about that. And at the end of the day, like, it really is validating. And I think one of those reasons you do need to surround yourself with great people, because these are the conversations that I think you can have with other marketing folks. And a lot of what I loved about Kelley is actually I met some amazing people, and I'm still friends with them today, still colleagues, still working with them. And I graduated in 99, you guys, so I'm ancient. And it's been like, 25 years almost. I'm still having these conversations for all of the reasons that you're hearing today.
Well said. And I agree. It's everyone thinks they can do marketing, right? And I think to some degree, everybody, listen, we all market ourselves, whether we intend to or not. So we have some of that, but some of us are better at it than others. And I would say that one of the things that has been really important and will be certainly important to all of the Kelley students on the call is making sure that as a marketing leader, no matter what role you're in, that you're able to show return on marketing investment. You want to show whether it's, extra sales, extra clicks, revenue resulting from the product you launch, whatever it is, but showing that ROI or ROMI is really, really, really critical, because not everyone, many people think it is simply just a creative field. And how do you judge whether you pick the blue mountain versus a green mountain on the can? What does it, and all of that stuff does matter. And today, certainly more so today than, wow, I hate to say almost 30 years ago for me, but it probably was. It's easier to track those things and pivot more quickly. So making sure that you're keeping an eye on ROMI is important too.
I love that you all touched on the art versus science. It came up recently in a Kelley class, and they may even landed on that it's more art than science. But for me, my take on it is that it's the scientific method, right? It's hypothesis generation and validation of those hypotheses through data and repeatable experiments. And the hypothesis generation is the art part. But yeah, I'd love to get all your takes on that. And Erin really spoke to the complexity of the CMO role. So I'd love to sort of, if you can, try and sort of sketch out the bounds of, your current or most recent CMO roles, or how you've seen the role sort of fluctuate between different positions, because it can be everything from managing marketing technology to managing retail to, just a brand, supporting sales, customer service. Just it can spread quickly into other areas of the business. Sometimes just entirely product is just in the marketing realm. So let me start with TD this time. You want to give us an idea of sort of where your scope is?
Yeah, I mean, and I think you touched on it. And different industries may have different areas of responsibility, but I'll just speak to my industry and the CPG. So, as a CMO, essentially the way I like to think about it is it's really sort of 4 swim lanes of what I'll call sort of skill set capabilities. So you have what I would call your brand management swim lane, right? So that's what most of us know as you're a brand manager of Fruity Pebbles, or you're a brand manager of Caribou, whatever, right? And so you are the business general manager of that brand, and essentially are responsible for the top line and bottom line and market share delivery of it. Then so if you say that's a swim lane, then you have a swim lane that we bucket under insights and analytics, consumer insights and analytics. And that's the combination of the qualitative things that you do with consumers, as well as the quantitative things when you think about your Nielsen's and your IRIs. And so we have data scientists and people who get really deep into the data and do all kinds of multivariate analysis, all to help those brand managers and those brand directors answer business questions. And so that's a swim lane, within, the scope. Then you have the swim lane that I like to call sort of, innovation and new ideas. And this is all the stuff from, really disruptive, future forward things. So, as an example, one of the things that we are looking at is this whole area of functional food, right? How do you take cereal and put new benefits, everything from adaptogens to, protein to keto to, you name it, right? All different kinds of facets. But we have a team that's working purely on that. And that's separate than the brand management team, because the brand management team, they're in it day in and day out. Like they don't have time to sort of, think blue sky. So we have a group that's focused on sort of the blue sky and the further out things. And then last but not least, you have the group that, I pretty much call the creative group. We call them performance marketing, but they're the folks that really do put that art. They're the folks that help translate strategy into creativity. And they're the ones that help us come up with the things like messing with Sasquatch, or come up with some of the things that, you see, all of the stimulus that you see on TikTok or you see on Instagram or whatever. We've got a group of people that really are in charge of that, working with agencies, working with other folks. But some of the ideas that we have actually are done in-house. So that's really the sort of 4 pillars, if you will, of the scope of my team. And, there's various roles and responsibilities with underneath that, but that's the simplest way for me to kind of frame it up.
Great. And Deborah?
Sure. And I would echo what TD said, which is it probably differs by industry sector and also by size of the company sometimes too, right? So, but my experience generally in financial services is that I'm going to say it quickly because there's a lot, right? But marketing, advertising, brand, PR, media, communications, crisis communications, and I want to asterisk that and come back to it, investor relations, internal sales, creative, including video, merchandise and swag, customer experience. I developed the NPS score for Broadridge, for example, website, social, product marketing, content marketing, the MarTech stack and analytics, and of course, return on marketing investment. All of that, and then some, has generally always been in my purview as a CMO, both at smaller and private and public companies. And so what I have found helpful just from a career perspective is having started out as a junior marketing associate, where you're working with all of those different groups on various levels, and then making my way up the ranks, and not always up, sometimes they're lateral moves, sometimes they're diagonal, but giving myself the experience to work with or within some of those specialties, I think made me uniquely qualified to be the CMO time and again. Oh, I wanted to underscore crisis communications for just a second because, and maybe we can come back to that later, and I would really love to hear from Erin and TD how they handle this. But one thing that I think has changed from the scope of a CMO today to where it used to be, which is we used to be the stewards of our brand, whatever product we were selling, right? And now we're also asked to take sides, politically or geopolitically or socioeconomically, or it doesn't really matter. Whatever the urgent issue of the day is, companies are now asked to take a stand. And sometimes on things that are so far removed from their business, I find that it's got to be super, super hard today to navigate that. So I'll just leave that there and let Erin talk about her scope.
Oh my gosh, Deborah, it's like you're inside my brain because we have about 300 stores actually in the Middle East. And so talk about some interesting challenges on the day-to-day. I won't even tell you how I spent my morning. It's just terrible. But from the lens of Caribou, the way that, and I actually saw someone asked in the chat around making that change from middle management to leadership. And I think a big tenet of that is actually coming to a company, having the experience that you've had to say, listen, this is where I think brands are going, right? This is what I think the role is that we need to play in society. So Deborah, exactly what you were just saying, right? Like there has to be a point of view, and it has to be really relevant for the consumers and the shareholders, the stakeholders in general, right? Of who it is that your product and service and brand is serving. So that's what I did when I got to Caribou, in the sense that, this is a beloved brand. If you are in Minnesota, talk about NPS. Our NPS is just off the charts. And a lot of it is because people just have a special place for it in their hearts, and they're very willing to promote it. But we, as a big little company, have bigger ambitions, right? So coming to Caribou, knowing that, after having conversations with the CEO and with the team, which was key in any great position that I've ever worked in, it's coming together with a point of view to say, this is how I see the role. This is what I think the company needs, and this is what I can deliver, and then giving them the reasons why. So for Caribou, I oversee the company's vision and mission, values and purpose. Really, it is that brand architecture through and through, top to bottom. So what that means is it's the development and execution of integrated marketing campaigns. Yes. Partnerships. Yes. Insights, these days, technology comes right into my team. So I think that's something that is different in this role than previously. And it's because of the fact that, this is pretty much brand in hand, at least for us these days. So again, coming to the table with that recommendation and saying, if you really want to accomplish all these things with the big M, all the things that Deborah said, right? These are the different tools that you're going to need to lead into it. The other side of that, with the technology piece and loyalty I talked about, is ESG. I hope that's something that Kelley is talking about and you guys are studying, because the whole implications of environmental, social governance is key in the role that we do. So thinking about things like customer service and, brand reputation and management, social, PR, all of that work has to be set with a strategy that really focuses on the things that are important from an environmental, from a social, and a governance perspective. So our crisis comms, yes, that rolls up through me, but we work really closely with our chief legal officer and her team, because it really comes down to risk management, right? Identifying what the issues are, and as the issues then can roll into incident, and then from incident, how they become crises. So you can see there is this whole general manager approach, I think, now to brand management. And that's the work that marketing is really being called to do.
Deborah,
Absolutely.
you want to add?
I was just going to say, and we can maybe talk about how AI is affecting some of our roles today too.
Yeah,
but
let's just
maybe we don't have enough time for that. That's a follow-up.
New challenges or things you didn't expect in the CMO role as stepping into that executive level. Just rapid fire, go for it. AI, great one. Thoughts on how that's going to change your work in the next month?
Deborah, I feel like you brought that up.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, here, I'll just tell you, right. I'm not a CMO as we sit here today, right? So I'm working on my own gig, but to be honest with you, I am not able to get an account with ChatGPT because they're not recognizing my email address. So I've been back and forth with the stupid chatbot for weeks to get this solved. I'm embarrassed to tell. I should probably just get a new email address, but I'm dying to play around with it because I feel like it could write my pitch book for me. And I think I will have it draft my pitch book for me. But I imagine certainly it's changing content marketing. It's changing how we're, listening to what's happening on social. It's probably changing how white papers are drafted. I know it's changing how college essays are written. And that's just on, the writing stuff. Never mind if we overlay AI implications to other pieces of our businesses, whether it's, keeping an eye on market pulse if you're in financial services, or on the way, your body reacts when you eat Fruity Pebbles, for example, if you're in the healthcare space. So I think there's probably implications we haven't even thought about yet, but it will certainly change the role of the CMO in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's an area for brands and companies to really look to new graduates, both at the graduate level and undergraduate level. I mean, all of it, because there's so much where it's become a little bit of a topic, that we have like at roundtables, et cetera, but the day-to-day and how things have been done in the past. And to be real, I would say that the trepidation that a lot of brands have to go into this space. I mean, we have a pretty tight lockdown at my day job around Gen AI, just from the sense of, origination of thought. And then how do we carry that through? Like if we were to build a campaign on that, like what does that really mean? And what kind of risk are we putting ourselves out there? But I will say that hasn't stopped me from dabbling, using like Microsoft Edge or even just Google and some of the search that they've had around, what does, it's just so curious, right? Like just typing in like, what does a full funnel marketing strategy look like, right? Putting that into the engines of, search, and just seeing now, instead of actually being referred right to articles, which was, how it was in the past, right? Like actually getting that whole white paper written for you. So, it's really interesting. I mean, I would love to know, TD. I mean, because I feel like almost like you have Deborah who's starting her own company. You have me who lives in this space of like big little company. And then you think about the bigger, probably more formalized structure that TD's a part of. So it would be interesting to hear his response as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, you think about AI, you think about Meta, you think about all of the variable. So if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Like as marketers, we are behavior change engineers. That's what we do. You think about 20 years ago, the things that changed behavior is this thing that you influence. I remember when there used to just be 5 channels on the TV, right? And now think about how many different ways we consume content and we consume, information. Each one of those is a way of influencing a consumer's behavior. And so as CMOs, that is our job, is to be on top of all of those things and figure out the best way. And so whether it's AI, whether it's metaverse, whether it's even different ways that consuming incentives. Like I remember back in the day when we used to drop FSIs. You remember that, Erin? Like you don't do that anymore. Coupons
Catalina
in all different ways, right? Yeah, exactly. So that and that's the exciting part about being in marketing, is that the world changes and we have to change and evolve with it. And all the variables that basically become our toolkit, you have to keep up with. So,
are any of your organizations, were they involved in sort of developing AI products yourselves, or integrating them into your products, or are you looking more towards like leveraging what's coming from B2B solutions and productivity solutions and leveraging that AI to do your jobs better? More the latter?
The latter for us, for sure. I mean, at the center of it all, we're about coffee and we're about humans, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so for us, it's, obviously not ignoring the fact that this is a game changer. But I would say that for us, it's more about the purpose that it serves rather than developing the technology ourselves.
Yeah,
I echo that.
Great. I see a bunch of questions in the chat. I just want to hold a little bit because we were going to get into the personal development. There's a lot of personal development questions there. Anyone, if anyone wants to raise their hand for a question related to just like the CMO role, the scope of it, the experience of that role, feel free to jump in here.
So one of the questions was about how do you start socializing the value of what marketing brings to the table? And so I'll just give you, an easy example. How about this? If your marketing group sends out a little summary or newsletter internally to your boss's boss and their colleagues, monthly, quarterly, I don't know, whatever it is, start putting in there a few statistics about, whatever, how many people are looking at your website, what your social click-through rate is. Did it increase, decrease from last month? So just start dropping those things into places that your senior people at the company beyond marketing would likely to receive.
And have you all encountered the sort of lack of understanding of the scope and the complexity and the channels and that you have to educate your board or educate your C-suite team on what marketing is and how to communicate that value that you could provide?
Yeah, so for sure, and particularly as the first named CMO to sit on the executive team at Broadridge, a publicly traded company, which during my tenure we also became part of the S&P 500. So the board was really keen to understand marketing, and it really is an education. So I sat there and I said, here's Deborah's view of marketing, right? It's the 3 R's. I'm here to drive revenue, right? Because that's what we're all sitting around here for. And I'm going to do that through, reputation, managing our reputation and developing client relationships. So it really is an ongoing education. You can't tell them at once. You got to put whatever your tagline is and whatever your purpose or your vision is in nearly every deck you produce internally for the board, for your boss, for the CEO, and continue just like a CFO role would do. Every month you're showing what your stats are. I would say that's one way to do it. That's how I've done it.
I love that so much because it's an ongoing piece, right? Like there's literally not a day that goes by that I'm not having to explain the value of the work that we do along with the work that we're doing. And I think it's just so ingrained at this point into the daily. I will say some of that depends by industry. So TD, like the industry of consumer packaged goods, I think actually marketing is in the top leadership positions, and even those in finance grew up with understanding how important it is to actually deliver to the consumer at the end of the day. But for those of us who have worked in other industries, healthcare is one. I mean, financial, services, right? Big ones where if you look at the progression and the path and what it takes to get from junior analyst to board member, right? It's very different, and it is very numbers focused, which is why I think there's a lot of value in that. That's kind of the universal language of ROI and the work that you do and what you're delivering against. But something that's really interesting, and I laugh about this with some of my friends, is like for a function and a service and a really like a thought leadership position of marketing, I feel like marketers have not always done the best job defining what marketing is as a whole. So it's almost like that whole like cobbler shoe example where we're so busy actually like, doing all the things to build revenue and grow relationships for others that we haven't necessarily done it for our function. So hang on tight, because it is something that you wind up doing in the daily. It's why, like when you look to it at the end of the day, like we have to cut dollars in spend in order to deliver EBITDA. It's like marketing what you got, so there is a little bit of that on an ongoing basis and demonstrating the value that you provide every day.
Yeah, and just to address some of the chat conversations about identifying the KPIs and the right ones, this is really critical, right? So a lot of marketers are just out there, okay, well, let me roll that back. What I would say is when you're developing your RAMI dashboard, okay, you want to do that from the point of view of what are the company's goals? What are the company's overarching metrics? And how can the things that you do fit into those metrics? So if the company doesn't care about who's looking at their website, then don't be showing those statistics, right? That's a bad example because everybody cares. But you know what I'm saying? Make sure you understand what the 2, 3, 4 top priorities are of your CEO and the board, and make sure that your metrics are talking to those priorities.
Yeah, just to add a final point, couldn't agree more with both what Deborah and Erin said. The constant debate is marketing an expense or is marketing an investment, right? What do you do with expenses? You cut expenses. And so any leadership team that I've ever been on where, the CEO or the CFO is talking about marketing as expense, I have to immediately reframe that, because then it's like free money. And to Deborah's point, right, you get to that quarterly end of the year and like, oh, I need $10 million. Hey, marketing, let me cut that expense. So you have to constantly reframe it as an investment. And I think in the chat, you talk about these vanity KPIs, things like impressions and eyeballs, right? Like that's all sort of airy-fairy stuff. And so you got to get down to real hardcore metrics, and I completely agree that are aligned with the company's metrics so that you can show that it is an investment. And if you cut this investment, then you're going to actually be cutting your revenue. And that's sometimes a hard thing to do. I think one of the good things about some of the tools that are out there now is there's a lot easier ways to do like direct attribution so that you can really show a true ROI and ROAS and all those sort of things. But that's the constant dance that all of us are doing every single day.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're trying to build brand equity and it's a real value. But it can't be amortized, so it's not considered like an investment. I guess while we're talking about value, and I wonder if you guys each have an interesting example of something you've had to cut that you determined was not valuable. Just how do you say no to an activity? Because we're all potentially pulled in a million different directions. So you got to say no to something. And how do you evaluate those? Erin, you want to go first on this one?
Sure. I think that's one of the reasons that going into this role and having done this now a couple of times, this being the CMO role, is thinking through how do I actually move forward in the process, right? So in this role in particular, that's one of the reasons I was like, listen, this needs to be a chief brand and marketing role, in the sense that at the end of the day, one of the things on my job description is our annual planning process, which is inherently built in some different, industries. It was not in this retail one that I'm in right now. I mean, typically that's led by more of finance or merchant, that role. So it was for me and for the success of understanding, like, listen, if this is what sounds appealing to you and what you want to do with this brand and marketing function, we need to actually start at the beginning with understanding, what are our objectives, what are our goals, what are our strategies, and what are our tactics as a company, and then being able to actually from there build out various charters for the work that we do, both on a project level and then also just in a priority level. So that makes it really easy, Marcus, because, especially in a big little company, you can imagine there are a lot of humans with a lot of great ideas and a lot of heart. And at the end of the day, when the rubber hits the road, it's coming to marketing to be like, okay, help me actually visualize this either through creative or insights or, whatever it is. Like we need resources, digital marketing, events, that sort of thing. And for us to be able to prioritize making it more about the work and the vision and where we want to take the company, what goals we're trying to hit, and what are going to deliver against those goals.
Okay, so let's pivot into personal and professional development. I think there's a lot of questions on this. I want to just ask two things up front. You can all address this from your own personal journey, and then I think it's probably most helpful to let the folks ask their own questions, and we can you guys can help workshop their own development. But I guess, what did you take away from your formal business and/or marketing education, and maybe what else did you pursue outside of Kelley? And then what other professional development that's not education specifically did you invest in, sort of networking or volunteering or whatever else outside has helped build your career? You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll just jump in because I maybe have less to say on this, but and my kids are now both out of school, and unfortunately neither one of them went to IU, but I did take my daughter on the IU tour when she considered it. And so I actually sat through the Kelley School parent program for what they do with the new students, and which is something that we didn't have. Although, again, I said Kelley prepared me well. I remember doing a resume. I remember doing mock interviews and all of that. But also, all of you are familiar with, they're going to make sure you've got a LinkedIn page set up well, and they're going to make sure you know how to write a cover letter and all of those things, which sounds small and like a ticket to the dance. But I can assure you, not every college does it. And as I'm coaching friends of mine whose children are starting to enter the work world who didn't go to IU, I'm like, who wrote your resume? So anyway, I think Kelley prepared us well for many things then and now. And I would say, beyond, making sure your skills are fresh and using them daily, networking to build and strengthen existing relationships is important. And that's both within the company, within your student friend group, your neighbors, the tennis team you join after college, doesn't matter, right? Making sure that you're building and developing relationships, because once you get started working, it's easy to get tunnel vision between your job and your family, if you have one, and not to continue to build relationships. And those relationships are helpful for many reasons in life, not the least of which is your career.
Deborah, real quick. So on the networking, we hear that a lot. Is there any specific avenue of that's been fruitful for you, I guess?
Well, so what I mean by that is, like, for years, I would just eat lunch at my desk if I ate lunch at all, right? And, when I finally changed after 10 years to another company, I decided I'm not eating lunch at my desk. I'm going to take someone in the office, even if it's walking to get a salad and walking back. Even something small like that is networking. Or making sure you're going to the IU meetups that happen in your city. I also joined Elevate Network, which is now national, but it was New York based. And it was financial services focused. It's run by Sally Krawcheck. And now it's all sectors. So Elevate, ELLEVATE network mostly for women, has been amazing.
Awesome. TD?
Yeah, I want to, double down on what Deborah said about networking. It's been one of the things. So one of the things for me, when I went through the direct program and some of the relationships that I formed with some of my fellow students, we kept that because each of us, a lot of us were transitioning either from a different industry or transitioning out of the military or whatever. So we were like, hey, well, let's all keep our email and our phone numbers. And if you run into something, I can call you. If I run into something, you can call me, blah, blah, blah. And I will tell you, like, it started as, just a group of friends. It's become invaluable to a point where we're still networking today. And there are other, sort of more formal share groups, things like that. Like I belong to a CMO share group, which is great. And I learn a lot. But I'm telling you, that group that I went through B school with, I still lean on those folks every single day, if for nothing else, just as a thought partner. And I would say that's probably the most valuable, sort of, lesson and approach that I could, stress upon you guys, is that all the folks that you're working with and the groups that you're working with, maintain that, because even if they're in a different industry, different company, whatever the case might be, you all eventually go through the same stuff. And it's so great to have thought partners out there that you can just bounce ideas, that you don't feel threatened by some, going to your boss or somebody that you work with that might look down upon you because they think you're asking a stupid question, right? When you can go to somebody outside, it just makes it so much easier. So yeah, I'm all, very supportive of what Deborah said about that.
And I mean, TD, I think this is what you're saying too, and Deborah too, but it's like, it's really helping to develop your value prop, right? Like that whole piece too. Because like, I know there's been a few questions in the chat around, how do I get from here to here? It's like, well, you can ask a CMO, or you can ask someone who's done it in a different way, or you can actually ask people that know you and also know the world of marketing, right? And that's what I hear you even saying about the military. Yeah, I think that's what's so important. Like, I'm a fan of networking. Yes. I'm a fan of mentorship. Yes. I'm a fan of reverse mentorship. Yes. But I think the whole peer piece is so huge, and it doesn't have to come from someone who is a higher, level than you are. In fact, sometimes that's actually a disservice to what it is that you really want to do. Right. Yeah. So I'm watching TD's face. He's like, yeah. But I think the other piece, about LinkedIn and all the tools, I always tell people when I am doing these kinds of talks, is like, to me, LinkedIn is down the funnel. Like I get, and this is, I'm really not like patting myself on the back because I'm not alone in this, but like I get a lot of requests, right, to like link in and to talk. And I mean, it's on the daily, like I'm putting, my team and my job and everything else first, right? The people I'm currently working with, my peers, et cetera. So I also would say take that same piece of value and put it into your day-to-day. So when you're looking to reach out to people to network, I mean, be humble, be supremely helpful. It's not about like setting up time to pick people's brains and stuff like that. It's amazing actually how much market intelligence is out there. So if you're really interested in connecting with someone, understand what problems they're working through, what opportunities you can actually bring to them, and come to them with that. Like connect the dots for them and come with a value prop of your own before you just reach out to someone or link in with someone. That's the biggest thing that I've seen break through for students, especially students with experience, right? There's a reason that you have the experience you have and that you're back at school. And, Marcus, you asked me this earlier and I forgot to answer it at the time. But when you talk about like that big roadblock, I think transitions are really hard. But the fact is you actually have a lot that you can already provide. So harness that. And then like in marketing, we do this so well, know your who, know their why, know what they're looking at, and help them with those problems, show them the opportunities.
Yeah, I can just add that the Kelley network has proven in a very short time to be super willing. I reached out to like just a handful of people, and almost all of them got back about being interested in participating with the Marketing Association, especially including all of you. And I was just shocked at how I expected like a 10% hit rate, and I did way better than that. So yeah, reach out to the alums. But I think Emma, Candace, Elise, anything you wanted to add on to those questions? You want to throw your hand up and come off mute and ask a little bit more about career development questions. Yeah,
thanks, Marcus. Yes, I would like to ask about, I'm currently in the job market and have an extensive experience in middle management for marketing. And someone had mentioned looking for skills rather than title. And so as I'm looking for my next opportunity, I've been focused a lot on title just because I want a certain level of responsibility. One of the reasons I've gone back to school is to deepen my leadership skills, because I am very much interested in moving up, because I want to be able to have more of an impact. And I love what I get to do when I get to build small teams and then we do really innovative things. This is the thing that's so fascinating about marketing, is that it's always changing. So as I'm looking in the, as I mentioned, for my next opportunity, when looking for skills, how does that translate into, what's available?
So I'll just maybe answer it in a different way, and hopefully Erin or TD can answer it in a better way for you. But I would say progress is not linear, right? And neither is the path to CMO or CEO for that matter, right? And so I think all of us have got to be willing to, whether it's in your existing job, volunteer to take on a project that is out of scope, right? So you've got visibility within the organization and you're learning something new. You can put that skill, on your resume. Or if you're looking for a new position, maybe, and you've been focused heavily on creative and brand, maybe this next one you want to have a marketing role that's more focused on data management. I don't know, but all of that is going to help you for a future progression ultimately. And just remember, progress isn't linear, and we're all here for the ride and for the people that we're working with and for. So it's not always fun and games at the CEO level or the CMO level, right? Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it.
I could not agree more. Let me give you just a real life example from my own personal experience of that exact situation. So this was while I was at Kimberly-Clark. I was a director of marketing. And to exactly what Deborah said, right? My ambition, my future career desire was to be a CMO, but I only had probably half of the skills that I actually needed. Well, I got an opportunity to actually go from director to VP, but it was in just one of those swim lanes that I was talking about. And I knew that if I did that, that was where I was going to end, because it essentially pigeonholed me in that particular functional skill set. And instead, exactly as Deborah described, I decided to take a lateral role, still as a director, but develop another part of my skill set that I hadn't done yet. And that's what ultimately enabled me to be well-rounded to eventually be able to be considered for a CMO. And so you're absolutely right. It is not linear. Like, you might bounce around, but what you want is, once you know where you ultimately want to be, and if you all aspire to be a CMO, all the different things that you've heard us talk about are the skills that you need to ultimately be ready to be a CMO. And if you don't have those, I strongly encourage to, even if it's a lateral move, even if it's a backwards move sometime, to go get those skills first, because that's going to set you up for the future career that you want.
And you said backwards, TD. What I think what you meant was maybe junior and or the following, taking a pay cut so you can learn new skills, which I have done, and sometimes a significant pay cut. And I didn't take it lightly. I was a sole breadwinner, putting the kids through college and whatnot. So those were, decisions I made for ultimately the right reason. And you don't know it when you're in it, but you're always learning. And if you don't like something, jump out.
Thank you.
The only thing I would add to that, I so agree. And I feel like I have that same example, TD. So like, it's so right. And Deborah, same thing, like, where I took a job no one else wanted, and it turned out to be the most important job of my career, So, but it sounds like you have a vision of what you want to do and why you want to do it. So write that down. Make sure you actually communicate that, at least, right? Like, and write down the skills that you think you have and only you have that can deliver against it. Because I think that's the other piece, is actually taking inventory of those skills. That's what I was talking about, at least when I was like, follow your curiosity and do the things that you want to do, because you have a very unique value in the work that you do. Just make sure you're able to articulate it succinctly.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. And since I have the moment, I just want to say this conversation has been absolutely fantastic. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Jordan. And thank you, Erin and TD and Deborah, for joining. This has been wonderful.
Our pleasure.
Emma, go for it.
Awesome. I'm gonna hope that my dogs don't wake up in the middle of this. But can you speak to, so I've spent my career at smaller companies. So I first worked at a digital agency that was very specialized, and now I work in-house, and our team is only like 6 marketers, right? So we all wear a lot of hats. And because of that, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of things, and I feel like I've been able to make an impact at the brands that I've participated with. But a lot of like my Kelley cohort and others that I've networked with, you know, kind of start out in the big brands and they have like a specialized focus and they move up in the tier. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of talk a little bit to, I guess, advice for somebody who didn't start at a large organization and like moving into that kind of thing, if it does require, you know, taking a step back to maybe more of a junior role, or if there are other recommendations of like ways to position yourself for success moving into a large organization when you've only been on smaller marketing teams.
I'm just going to jump in there and say you'd be exactly the kind of candidate I'd want to hire into any of those big firms I work for, because I know you wore all those hats. And so you know all of the machinations and the issues related to getting XYZ launched. So, you know, I'd venture to guess if you were interested in working for a bigger company, you might be really pleasantly surprised to see that you'd be really valuable, particularly now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think one of the things, having worked in both big and small, when you're in big companies, you can hide. And sometimes you don't necessarily, you know, get your hands dirty. Because there's so, you know, a lot of times big companies are a machine, and they like General Mills is a machine, and like you can just sort of ride the wave because there's an army of people who are doing stuff, right? Whereas you go to a small company, you got to do it. And so I know when I'm, you know, interviewing and looking for people, I talk about what actually did you do? And a lot of times the folks who've been at smaller companies actually roll their sleeves up and got the work done versus, you know, folks at big companies didn't. And it's very clear when you're talking to folks. So yeah, I almost think about that as an advantage versus a disadvantage as you're, you know, looking to market yourself.
Yeah. And it's that whole idea of like what it is that you think you can do with those skills and making it really easy for other people to understand. And then being able to go deep into examples. I mean, everything we've talked about now, it's like, I think that's the thing is like, I laugh when people are like, oh, great, as CMO, you're kind of up here and you're like kind of looking at everything. And I'm like, depending on the day, I mean, I try not to like micromanage the work that's being done, right? But you have to have those proof points at every single level. And it sounds like you've got probably a lot of really great proof points that you can actually say, I did this.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Candace, did you have more? I can ask another question. So I'm curious about sort of the more, okay, go ahead, Candace.
Hi, you know, I'm curious if you have a perspective on whether or not we should focus our studies for aspiring CMOs on marketing or on strategy. There's a couple of options, and I know some Kelley students make their own path. I wonder if you have a perspective on that.
Candace, I think I saw your question in the chat. And it was one that I was hoping we would get to, because I just actually was at the University of Minnesota doing a marketing class, and there were actually people in the room that were ops majors, and they almost didn't take this class. They had to take a marketing class to like fulfill. And they're like, one of the things I'm so excited that I did is I now understand really what marketing is, right? So I think the same for marketing. I mean, it used to be in the day that it was like, as a marketer, you'd work most closely with sales, right? Or well, really sales at my time when I graduated. And now, if I don't really have an understanding of legal, operations, technology, like you name it, like I can go across, obviously finance, we've talked about that, but I feel like Kelley does a really good job of providing that. I don't think you necessarily need to major in those things, but I have an ops minor. That's what I did at Kelley, and ops and decision science. And I'm so glad that I did that, because it's like I am able to actually just talk about so many things that may not necessarily be directly related to the day-to-day in marketing. So I would say that, and this goes back to an earlier question that Marcus asked too, around things that you're doing outside of work to continue to keep yourself sharp, whether it's associations or it's continued learning or whatnot. I do a lot outside of the marketing function. So, different organizations, yes, but even just, webinars or conferences or whatnot, because I think that really, in order to be able to drive revenue and do all the things that we need to do in the roles that we're in, we have to have a really good understanding of all of the things that produce those things at every level and at every function.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Curious if anyone wants to share maybe some of the more entrepreneurial experiences and how that shaped your sort of skill set and qualification. I personally find myself working at a large organization and wanting to pivot back into something that's a bit more high growth. I think as marketers, we all want to grow revenue. Being part of the process of in an organization that's growing and developing those things, I feel like is a good part of the experience. So it's not just like working somewhere small and taking on all the work. It's good for experience, but it also doesn't develop your ability to prove that you've grown. So I'm curious, the entrepreneurial side of things or the high growth companies that you've worked for, what was the learnings there?
I'll just start by saying it's not for everyone, right? It's not either the big company nor the small company nor the high growth company is for everyone. You might find what really works for you, and that's your career, and that's amazing. I've had the great good fortune to have a mix of all of that in my career. And I wish I could tell you it was all perfectly planned out. It wasn't. It was serendipitous. But the other thing I would say as a woman and as a mom and a working mom, sometimes I made career decisions that put me in a place where I could better manage home and work than be either more focused on home or work. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I've been also fortunate to work in different business environments and situations. Turnaround versus, kind of a slow and steady as she goes versus like explosive growth. Like Jack Link's was explosive growth. We were like a $200 million company that, had 20% household penetration. And when keto and paleo came out, next thing you know, you had 50% household penetration. We're doubling every single year, but that's highly stressful too, right? So, there's pros and cons. I mean, it's obviously exciting, like being in a growing category like beef jerky, very different than being in a declining category like cereal. But I say you learn from both business situations. And, I think in all cases, it's the same, all the things we've been talking about with the, curiosity and the connections and all of the facets that you utilize regardless of what that particular business situation is. You just apply it differently because of that.
I love that. I mean, both of those responses. I think the one thing that the reality is, right, is the CMO role is actually the shortest tenure in the C-suite. And I think that's for a reason. It's because you actually do wind up having a lot of different experiences, sometimes at one company, but very, very rarely at one company. I mean, it is about jumping around and taking what you learn over here, or also being recruited for an opportunity over there. And I mean, there's so much. So at the end of it all, it will be like this, and that's okay. Like, it's truly what you're doing on the daily. And are you providing value? Are you happy doing what you're doing? Are you challenged? Does it work in the role that you're in right now? Like, I wouldn't hold too tightly to those things. I would actually hold more tightly to, am I waking up in the morning? Am I excited? Am I delivering results? And just take it from there.
Great. Deborah, TD, Erin, any of you have questions for each other or things that you wish we should touch on? I've got more questions. I also want to open it up to everybody else. Throw your hand up. I
have a question maybe for the students more than the panelists, which is, and maybe it's Marcus and Jordan, what what is the IU curriculum these days with respect to new technology like AI? Are they teaching classes on that in your program? What about blockchain? Is there a class on blockchain? What is IU still preparing you for what's happening in the real world?
Yeah, so as part of the core curriculum, we took technology management, which is a little bit of touch on everything, cybersecurity threats to emerging tech and just financial management and IT space. So that's, I guess, part of the core of it, but it is a little bit more on managing and understanding that space. But then elective work, someone put in the chat the digital transformation on business, or I took another one it was really just like, I was like, okay, AI is happening. This course is all about AI. I'm going to take this, and it's on a technology track. So you could easily avoid it beyond that technology management core curriculum, but there's lots of opportunities to lean into it and explore it. So, sounds like you would echo that opportunity as a good one to take advantage of while you're here.
1000%. I don't see any blockchain in the chat yet, but
no,
okay.
Let's talk the blockchain for sure. AI is kind of drowned it out in terms of the hype of the day.
What about ESG? Like, is that getting a lot of airtime?
There's actually one class taught by Kelley Askew. She is a professor in legal, and she taught a sustainability and business class that I took. And it was really interesting because it's half about the legislation and then half about obviously we're entrepreneurs and we want to make money and make revenue, but how can you do that in a sustainable way? And I thought that was a great way to look at it.
That's super interesting. I think personal, a couple of things. I mean, obviously IU has such a strong environmental program. I always kind of was hopeful that they would actually do something to merge like the business with the environmental sciences school and program, but
O'Neill.
Yeah, I think I don't think it was when I was there, but it was actually, it's tied to maybe the undergrad school.
Yeah.
Is that still?
Yeah, they actually do team up with them. Yeah, they renamed it recently to O'Neill. That's a school of public health, or no, sorry, not public health, public something. But they do sustainability, and they do team up with them quite a bit, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, that, you guys, I think it ebbs and it flows depending on like who's in office and what's being talked about. But I do know from like it's just one of those things that I feel like there's still kind of this misunderstanding of exactly that. Like, we all want to be sustainable, but how can we be sustainable and still, churn out profits? And I think, Unilever just got totally slammed in the market because they were talking about some of this work. And I mean, so it's still a very rocky relationship. But I think that what is interesting about ESG as a philosophy and a management framework is that it goes beyond that to think about how do you show that triple line benefit. So definitely doing good for the environment, but also doing better for the bottom line. So it's such an interesting space, and I just think it's going to become even more important, especially as you look at like Gen Z and Alpha, and right, it's just going to become increasingly more important for companies to have a really good position on this and not fall too far behind, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. Some unprompted advice.
Great. This is all great. And got a question. Great.
Hi, my name is Boomy. I went through the direct program a couple of years ago. My career started in general brand management, and then I kind of migrated into more performance marketing. So I'm curious from the CMO seat, and marketers maybe developing their career plans, how do you look at brand management, brand marketing versus growth and performance marketing? What are the skill sets like marketers of the future should develop?
We need them all in equal measure, probably, and maybe different measure depending on what we're marketing.
Yeah, what industry, right? Like what the growth goals are for the industry and the company that you're at. But I agree, Deborah.
Yeah, and I think you've heard us say this a couple of times. Find what fulfills you. I'll give an example of a person that's on my team who was also in sort of traditional brand management and wanted to do a stint. We have our performance marketing team where, you know, all the social and digital media and all those sort of things. And that person went over there and loved it. And basically said, I want to stay over here. Even if it means that I can't be a CMO one day, that's okay, because this is what I enjoy and this is what fulfills me. So that's what I would encourage all of you guys to do is, you know, marketing has so many different tentacles, as we've been talking about, you know, and you don't have to be a CMO to have a really good marketing career and have a lot of fun. So, you know, take advantage of getting experience in a variety of different facets, and you might find a lane that you just want to stay in, and that's totally fine.
I've got one last question for all of you. You know, having, you know, for some of us as we sit here, you know, becoming a CMO is a stretch goal. After having accomplished that, how do you think about what's next for you? How do you keep the challenge exciting and think about what's next, if it's, you know, general executive role or investing or more CMO work?
Well, I'm happy to take that question because that's where I'm at right now. Listen, doesn't mean I wouldn't accept another corporate CMO role. But I think you got to do what drives you, right? And throughout this last year or so, I've come upon an idea that, you know, is really motivating to me. And somebody said to me, wow, that's exhilarating and terrifying at the same time, thinking about starting your own thing. And Erin could probably attest to this, having done a few already herself. But I'm probably, you know, at the right age and stage of life and career to contemplate taking a big risk like that. And so, but regardless of where I'm at in life and my career, I think I would give the same advice, which is you got to trust your gut, right? Almost every day. If you're in a situation, personal or work, that doesn't feel good, it's for a reason. Get out. And if you're in a place that feels good every day and you wake up happy on Monday morning, you know, you should be staying there, right? And growing. So I've mostly followed my gut throughout my career, and so far so good, but we could check back next year and see where I'm at.
I think you just volunteered. It's an annual thing, but
I know, I was like, that would be funny. Like, where are they now? Like, I don't know. I feel like that's like an Us Weekly thing. It could also be a Kelley School of Business thing. You know, I ask myself that question all the time. I'm loving where I'm at right now. Coffee's inherently fun, and I kind of feel like this was a big part to get here, to be doing something that I love, like from a product standpoint, and also be working in a corporate enough environment where there's the regularity of, you know, HR and some other infrastructure to lessen the stress. Actually, Deborah, of doing your own thing, which by the way is amazing. So I'm not trying to talk you out of that. But I think that, you know, knowing that the average tenure of a CMO, right? Like, I think CMOs kind of sit in that role where they're always kind of like a little bit of this, like ears open and perked up. I've started to serve on some boards, which has been really interesting. I mean, one of them, and I'll share it with all of you because you should go there and check it out, and is Turn Signal, which is all about bringing safety at traffic stops and other mechanisms where there's typically a racial barrier to equality and, you know, safe outcomes. So that's the work that I'm really involved in right now, and I'm following my gut and my curiosity to see how I can serve in that space. Doing a little bit of teaching here and there, but I think really at the end of it all, it is waking up every day and being like, am I putting out good in the world? Am I living true to my brand promise, right? Which for me is all about doing good things with good people. So we'll see when you're out.
Yeah, I would echo both. I mean, I some advice I got a long time ago, and I've tried to do the same thing, is when you think about purpose as the intersection of doing what you're good at and where you can add value, like that becomes like my compass. And so however that manifests itself, that just so happens to be where I'm at right now. And I'm really good at what I do and I'm able to add value. And so in both ways, you find purpose and you find fulfillment. And I think as long as you're doing that, as long as you use that as sort of a, a litmus test for whatever roles that you guys decide to do, you'll be happy and you'll be fulfilled. And, there'll be challenging days. Erin and Deborah can attest to it. Like, there's days where, look, I don't have any freaking hair anymore because I pulled my hair out, but equally, right, it gets nice and shiny because I'm like, yeah, we're doing it. So, that's just the nature of the beast, but that's life. I would just say, find what you're good at and what you love and where you can add value and you'll be good.
And do it with really good people.
Well, Deborah, TD, Erin, thank you all so much for your time and your wisdom, and look forward to seeing you all next November. And for everyone else who joined, thanks for all your time and your questions. And if you're a current student, find the Canvas module. You can join the Marketing Association or hit me up on LinkedIn, and we can talk. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all so much. And Marcus, thank you, because you did a really great job pulling this all together. It's not easy. It may look a little easier than it is, but and Jordan, you too, but it's a lot of work. So thank you. This was really enjoyable for me as well. Thank you.
100%. Thank you guys so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.